It was Halloween night, and the streets were quieter than usual. I had just finished my late shift driving for Uber and was heading home when a ride request popped up from a dark, almost deserted part of town. The app showed just one passenger, a girl in an old-fashioned Halloween costume, her face partially hidden by a mask. When I pulled up, she climbed into the back seat without saying a word. Her eyes, barely visible behind the mask, were fixed on the window staring into the night. The air in the car felt heavy, scented faintly with candy corn and pumpkin spice. At first, I thought it was just the unusual Halloween quiet making me uneasy, but as we drove, I noticed something strange. The route she was taking didn't match any location on my GPS. By the time we reached the supposed address, I turned to speak to her, and the seat was empty. The streets were lined with carved pumpkins, their flickering faces casting odd shadows on the sidewalks. I tried to focus on the familiar streets, the way the houses were decorated for Halloween, but everything felt wrong. The girl in the back seat remained silent, her mask hiding any expression, yet somehow I felt her eyes on me from the rearview mirror. I attempted small talk, hoping to ease the tension. "Long night for trick-or-treaters?" I asked. No response. The only sound was the faint hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of leaves on the sidewalk. I tried glancing back to check if she was adjusting her seat or moving, but she sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. The GPS on my phone still didn't match the route she was taking. I began to feel uneasy, but I reassured myself it was Halloween night. Maybe she just wanted a quiet ride. The streetlights passed by like slow pulses, each flicker making the shadows in the car stretch unnaturally. By the time we neared the supposed destination, my heartbeat was already quickening. Every familiar house looked distorted in the dim glow of jack-o'-lanterns. The silence between us was heavy, almost suffocating, broken only by the occasional creak of the car's suspension over uneven pavement. I tried one last attempt at conversation. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Still nothing. The unease settled in my stomach, a cold weight that refused to leave. I realized that despite all the Halloween decorations, the smiling pumpkins, and the festive lights outside, something about this ride wasn't normal. Something about her wasn't normal. As we drove further into the dimly lit streets, the scenery became unfamiliar. Houses I had passed countless times looked abandoned, their windows dark and empty, yet Halloween decorations remained eerily intact. The girl didn't move, didn't blink. She just stared out the window as if she were looking through reality itself. I tried to keep calm. "Are we close?" I asked. Still nothing. The silence weighed heavily on me. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, the knuckles white. The engine's hum sounded louder than it should have, almost like it was echoing the tension inside the car. Then I noticed a faint movement out of the corner of my eye, a shadow flickering behind her mask. My stomach twisted. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Her face seemed to shift, pale beneath the mask, lips curving slightly into a knowing smile. I blinked. The shadow disappeared. The GPS still didn't match the route. Every turn I made led me deeper into streets that shouldn't exist. The faint scent of pumpkin spice lingered in the air, mingling with the scent of something old, decayed. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me because it was Halloween. Suddenly, the car's interior felt colder. The mask she wore seemed almost alive, reflecting the dim streetlights in a way that made her eyes look right into my soul. I checked the side mirrors. Empty. No cars behind, no pedestrians. Just darkness stretching endlessly. I arrived at the supposed address and pulled over, heart racing. I turned around, ready to speak or warn her, and the seat was empty. The door hadn't opened. No one had exited. My breath caught in my throat. Reaching for the dashcam, I played back the footage. She appeared briefly, her eyes locked on mine, her smile just as eerie, and then vanished. The car remained empty throughout the rest of the ride. My hands trembled as I replayed it, frame by frame. Then a whisper. Faint at first, just on the edge of hearing, but unmistakable. My name. I spun in the driver's seat, staring into the back. Empty. The whisper repeated, closer this time. Goosebumps rose across my skin. I slammed the door, ready to drive away. The app pinged. Next ride assigned. My eyes widened. The pickup location. Unknown. Immediate. And the passenger? Another single rider. Waiting. The back seat creaked. I froze. The mask appeared again, closer now, as if she had never left. And in the reflection of her eyes, countless other masked faces stared back at me. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding. The doors locked on their own, and the whispers grew louder. Multiple voices now, all calling my name. I never found out who or what was in my back seat that Halloween night. The dashcam footage replayed endlessly in my mind. The girl's fleeting smile etched into my memory. Even the GPS route had no record of the streets we'd driven. Every Halloween since, I feel her presence. Sometimes it's just a flicker in the rearview mirror. Other times, a whisper brushing against the edge of my hearing. Friends say it's the holiday spirit, a trick of my imagination, but I know better. The app still sends ride requests, even when I'm not driving. And every time I glance at the back seat, I swear the mask appears again. Alone, I sit in my car, the Halloween air cold and heavy, listening for the softest creak, the faintest whisper. My name being called from the darkness behind me. I can't explain it. I don't want to. All I know is that Halloween night, the streets are never truly empty, and sometimes the silent passenger is still waiting. Story 2. It was late on Halloween night, and I was driving through a remote stretch of highway. The air was crisp, the streets deserted, except for the faint glow of jack-o'-lanterns flickering from distant houses. I decided to stop at a small quiet rest area to stretch my legs. As I stepped out of the car, I noticed a man standing near the entrance. His costume was tattered and faded, as if it had been worn for decades. He stepped closer, and in a low, raspy voice asked, "Do you know me?" The words froze me in place. I looked around. There was no one else, just him, staring directly at me. I wanted to respond, but something about his presence felt wrong. Too intense, too still. Even the Halloween lights seemed to dim when he moved. The rest area was eerily quiet for Halloween night. A few flickering jack-o'-lanterns lit up the perimeter, their carved faces casting elongated shadows on the asphalt. Normally, this spot would be bustling with families in costume, but tonight, it felt abandoned. I locked the car behind me, hoping the brief stretch of walking would clear my mind. The air smelled faintly of fallen leaves and pumpkin spice, mixing oddly with the dampness of the evening. The streetlights flickered intermittently, and the only sound was the rustle of leaves beneath my shoes. I tried to shake off the unease. "It's just Halloween," I told myself. "People like to scare each other." But the man remained. He didn't move, didn't speak again, just stood there staring at me. His tattered costume flapped slightly in the wind, making him seem almost unreal. Every instinct told me to walk away, but curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, kept me rooted. I glanced at my car, parked a few dozen feet away, and the thought that something could happen before I reached it sent a chill down my spine. Every shadow seemed exaggerated, every flicker of light making the scene feel like it belonged in a horror movie. I considered ignoring him and getting back in the car, but then he whispered my name, not loudly, just enough that I could feel it against the back of my neck. I spun around, empty. The wind carried only the faint rustle of leaves, yet the sensation of being watched remained. As I cautiously approached my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The man in the tattered costume hadn't moved, yet somehow he seemed closer, his eyes locked on me like a predator tracking prey. The dim orange glow of distant jack-o'-lanterns cast long shadows, stretching him unnaturally across the pavement. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just another Halloween reveler trying to be creepy, but something about the intensity in his gaze made it impossible to dismiss. I reached for the car door, and a chill ran down my spine as I realized the air around me had grown inexplicably cold. The wind carried whispers, faint at first, just at the edge of hearing. I stopped, straining to listen. It sounded like multiple voices murmuring my name, blending with the rustling leaves. My heart began to race. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs felt heavy, stuck to the asphalt as if gravity itself had doubled. Then I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Shadows shifted unnaturally near the rest area benches. The man seemed to flicker, almost disappearing, and reappearing a few feet closer each time I blinked. Panic surged through me. I fumbled for my phone, intending to call someone, anyone, but it slipped from my hand and clattered to the ground. I scrambled to pick it up, glancing back at him. This time his face was clearer, gaunt, pale, with dark eyes that seemed endless. My breath caught. A whisper again, this time right behind me. "You shouldn't have stopped." I spun around. Empty. Nothing. Just the faint sound of wind through the skeletal trees surrounding the parking lot. The chill in the air deepened, and I could swear the shadows were moving toward me. My car, usually a safe haven, suddenly seemed like a trap. The streetlights flickered violently, casting fleeting glimpses of the man in every reflection, on windows, on the shiny hood of my car, even on the pavement itself. I dove into the driver's seat, locking the doors instantly. The app still showed the next ride request. I hesitated, breath ragged, the man's figure seemingly hovering at the edge of my vision, just outside the car. His whispered words echoed in my mind, unrelenting. "Do you know me?" The car's interior was silent, but the sensation of being watched was overwhelming. Every shadow in the rearview mirror seemed to stretch, bend, and multiply. I gripped the steering wheel as if my life depended on it, and in some way it did. I never saw him again after that night, but the memory lingers like a shadow. The whispers, the cold, the way his eyes seemed to pierce right through me. They haunt every Halloween since. Friends say it was just a trick of the mind, the isolation of the highway, but I know better. Every time I drive past that rest area now, I feel a presence in the corner of my vision. Sometimes I think I see a tattered costume, sometimes just a flicker of movement, always accompanied by that raspy whisper calling my name. I tried to tell myself it was over, that I had escaped, but the app still occasionally sends requests from that stretch of road, even when I'm not driving. And every time I feel the cold chill in the air, that same heavy dread settling into my chest. Halloween night is never just a night of fun anymore. Somewhere out there, the silent stranger waits, watching, whispering, and I can only hope I never cross his path again. Story 3. It was Halloween night, and I was finishing my last delivery of the evening. The streets were quiet, houses lit only by flickering jack-o'-lanterns and strings of orange lights. My final stop was an old house at the edge of town, the kind of place kids dared each other to approach but rarely entered. When I arrived, the porch light was on, but the door was slightly ajar. I knocked, announcing my presence, but no one answered. I stepped inside to leave the package and heard a faint creak behind me. Turning around, I saw the front door slowly closing, though no one else was in the house. A chill ran down my spine. Something about the house felt alive. The shadows in the corners seemed to stretch toward me, and the faint sound of footsteps echoed upstairs, though I was certain the place was empty. The house was one of those old suburban homes at the edge of town, with peeling paint and a creaky front porch that seemed to groan under every step. Halloween decorations hung loosely, faded by years of sun and rain. Normally, I would have left the package on the doorstep and gone on my way, but the door being slightly ajar caught my attention. I stepped inside, calling out a polite, "Delivery for you!" but the house remained silent. The familiar smell of autumn air mixed with the musty scent of an old home. Every Halloween, I made dozens of deliveries, but this one felt different, heavier, colder somehow. The living room was dimly lit by a single flickering light above the fireplace. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, making the familiar space feel alien. I moved carefully, placing the package on the table, my eyes scanning for signs of the homeowner. None appeared. Even the furniture seemed unusually still. The air felt thick, almost as if it resisted movement. I glanced toward the staircase, half expecting a child in costume, maybe a playful prank. But the house remained unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. I tried to shake off the unease. "It's just an old house," I whispered to myself. "Nothing more." Yet the faint creaking above, the occasional flicker of light, and the subtle draft brushing past my neck made it impossible to ignore the feeling that I wasn't truly alone. As I lingered in the living room, placing the package carefully on the table, the house seemed to breathe around me. The air grew colder, carrying with it a faint musty odor that hadn't been there before. Shadows lengthened and shifted unnaturally along the walls, as if something unseen moved within them. A sudden creak from the staircase above made me freeze. My heart raced, and I strained to hear any further movement. The faint sound of footsteps echoed, soft but deliberate, descending toward the living room. I glanced toward the stairs, but the shadows hid any possible source. The flickering light above the fireplace stuttered, casting brief, warped images across the room. I thought I saw a figure in the corner, pale and still, but when I blinked, it vanished. The door behind me, previously open, had slowly creaked shut. My hands moved instinctively toward the knob, but it wouldn't budge. I backed up, scanning the room. Every familiar object seemed slightly off, edges blurred, angles twisted. The air pressure shifted, making it harder to breathe. The silence was interrupted by whispers, faint and overlapping, as if dozens of voices murmured just out of comprehension. Then a sound that made my blood run cold. The front door handle rattled, lightly at first, then more violently. I called out, my voice trembling, but the house swallowed it immediately. Footsteps appeared to move across the hardwood floor behind me, approaching slowly. I grabbed my phone to call for help, only to find it dead. No signal, no battery, as if the house itself had swallowed all connections to the outside world. Panic surged. Every instinct screamed to run, yet my feet felt rooted. The shadows stretched toward me, and I realized with terror that something unseen was guiding them. Then I heard it, a whisper, right behind my ear, raspy and cold. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, but the room remained empty. My eyes darted to the stairs. The faint outline of a figure stood at the top, watching, unmoving. A chill ran down my spine. I stumbled toward the door, fumbling with the handle. Just as it gave way, I caught a glimpse in the hallway mirror. Dozens of faces staring at me from every shadow, all wearing expressions of silent warning. I barely made it out of that house alive. As soon as the front door swung open, the cold air hit me like a wall, and I ran without looking back. The package was still in my hands, untouched, but the house seemed different, darker, watching. Even now, weeks later, I feel that presence every time I pass that street. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear footsteps echoing behind me, faint but deliberate, or a whisper brushing the edge of my hearing, calling my name. Friends dismiss it as nerves, the stress of working late hours on Halloween, but I know what I felt that night. The house still stands, its windows dark and silent. The porch light flickers, and occasionally a shadow moves just inside, watching. I've never returned to deliver there again, but I know the next Halloween, that silent watcher will still be waiting, patient, silent, and hungry for attention. And the whispers, they never truly leave.